and we'll do it it goes to my cloud Google account. All right, I just want to make sure you got a recording because they're going to be students who are going to be in need of this.
Yes.
All right, take care.
Can you tell if it's recording?
Yes, it is same recording on my screen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So for everybody who's on right now, I know a lot of people just joined. So do people have the link of the website I'm at right now?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if people join on and want to figure out where, I'm just going to post it in the chat. Okay, a good number of people are here. I think I'm going to get started. So as I was saying a little bit earlier, I know a lot of people have just joined the class. And so if you just joined the class, or if you feel like you need to catch up a little bit, I'm planning on having office hours on Friday around 11 a.m. So if you want to be part of that, just
11 a.m.
email. What'd you say, Anthony?
11 a.m. What standard time?
Oh, Eastern Standard Time, so Howard's time zone. So around the same time this class starts, but on Friday. So if you want to be part of that, just send me an email and I will make sure you get the Zoom link for that.
I'm sorry, for what?
For office hours, if you want to get some extra help.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So for people who have been in class for a few days, you might notice that there's something different on my screen. So usually I just have pound include IOStream, and now today I have pound include string. And that's because today the first thing we're going to be talking about is data types. So can anyone think of data types that we've already been using?
Integer.
Integer. Char.
Yep. So let's say int a equals 0, char b equals %. So I know we've dealt a lot with integers because we've been doing a lot of math things. So char for character, it can be a letter or it can be a symbol. It can really be anything you type in, but the specification of a char is that it's exactly one character. So if I wanted, for example, to put hello world, that would not be a char. That would be a string. So in the previous programs, if we were using strings, we usually just use cout to just print them out. But if we want to be able to manipulate the words within this string throughout the program, then we have to create a space in memory for them, just like we did for the integers and the characters. And in addition to strings, there's also another data type that I want to talk about, which is called a float. So the difference between an integer and a float is that both are numbers, but integers are only whole numbers, whereas floats can use decimals. So do these four data types make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Just
Wait, can you explain it one last time so I can like write that down?
course.
Each data type.
Yes. So actually, let me put a comment next to each one of them.
Oh, okay, that's even better.
Yeah. So int is for integers, which are numbers that are whole numbers. So for example, 0, 5, 1000, 50, those are all integers. So char is for single characters. So it could be A, or it could be star, or it could be F.
These are the data structures or the data types?
Data types. Data structures are something completely different, and we're going to get to that a lot later. And actually, even 1 can be a character as long as 1 is supposed to be a word and not a number. Does that make sense? Let me try to explain that again, so I'm not sure if that's very clear. So if 1 is an integer, that means it's a number that I can do math with. But if 1 is a character, I cannot do math with it. That means I'm trying to include the word or letter 1 in something that I'm typing. And so the computer looks at the character 1 and the integer 1 in completely different ways. So a string is a number. Yes.
Line 17, what's after characters?
I'm sorry, that's a typo. Characters. I have no idea what I was trying to type there. Characters are letters, symbols are letters. Oh, single, right. Oh, and another difference between a character and a string is that a character always has single quotes and a string always has double quotes.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes,
Why didn't you put like a semicolon after the character?
because I was not paying attention. Thank you for catching that.
No problem.
And then a float is a decimal number. So it could be 1.4.
You said char always has a single one. I forgot what you just said.
Oh yeah, a single quote. So you see how there's only one dash right here, and then there's two dashes down here?
On a string. All right.
Yep. So like 1.4.
Professor,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but why is the percentage sign in quotation marks? What's the purpose of that?
So the reason why it's in quotation marks is because I created a space in memory called B for characters, and percent sign is a character that I can put there. So I could
Okay, thank
change
you.
this to A or B or 7 or percent. I was just using that as an example.
So what
Also,
exact symbols are singles? Oh, it's only for single variables?
Only for a single symbol. So if you can type it with one finger on your keyboard, then you can put it in a character.
And is that assigning something?
So line 17 is assigning something. So it's saying I'm creating a space in memory called B that holds characters, and I'm putting this character in that space.
Every time you call B, it will give you that character that you selected.
Exactly. So if I do cout B, then it's just going to print the percent sign. I mean the and sign.
It's gonna print the one sign.
This percent sign, I mean the and sign that I just put into B.
Oh,
So whatever I put here is what it's going to print out. So if I put A here, it's going to print A. If I
Okay.
put percent here, it's going to print percent. And if I put and here, it's going to print and. And let's just run the program to verify that.
so what happens if you put a double quote on a character?
Then I believe the computer will give you a compile error, but let's see. Yeah, so it's saying you're trying to put so this error basically means you're trying to put a string to a spot where a character is supposed to go. And so it won't do that because it sees strings differently than it sees characters.
Professor, I have one question.
Yes.
For a string, does it have a character limit?
So the string, I believe it has a character limit, but I'm not sure. It's something I'll have to look up. So if you go up to the documentation, if you typed into Google C++ length limit for string, then you could probably look that up, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
For a string, if you put one letter in between the double quotes, would you get an error or would it still work?
No, as long as you put it in double quotes, it will recognize it as a string.
Okay.
So let's say if I wanted to print C instead, which is a string, it should work just fine. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Oh, that brings up a good point. So any character can be a string, but any string that's over one character cannot become a character. Could be put in a character space in memory.
So say that one more time.
I'm sorry, I heard two people talking at once.
Would it just make sense to like always use a string then?
So you wouldn't always, so the reason why you would use characters sometimes is because some programs are, so a character only takes up a very small piece of memory, and a string takes up a bigger piece of memory. So if you want to use up less memory when you're writing your program, then you might want to use a character because you don't need any extra space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.
So you basically just don't want to keep making memories of space. If you can use it, repeatedly use it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's not something I'm going to be very strict on in the beginning, because as long as you get your program to work, I'm happy. But once you get into more advanced levels of coding, that's something that's going to be a bigger factor.
So why do you have to put include string at the top?
So the reason you have to put include string at the top is because int, char, and float are automatically parts of C++, but just like cout and cn, which are part of IOStream, string is something that a standard C++ programmer programmed for everyone to use that has to be downloaded. It's not a natural part of the C++ language.
Got it. And you said that any character can be a string, and I didn't catch the last part.
Oh yeah, so any character can be a string, but not any string can be a character, because strings can be more than one character, and so they wouldn't fit into a character space in memory.
Thank you.
No problem.
In characters B, you said?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When you say character, are you talking about the line 17?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, are there any more questions before I move to the next thing? Okay, so now I'm going to be doing some more stuff with integers and floats because they're very similar. So let's say, for example, I did int c equals 5. Well, no, I can't do that. I already called something c.
Professor,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when I tried to run the program you did earlier, I think it didn't work for some reason.
Okay, so does your line 9 say pound include IOStream?
Yes.
Okay, and then line 10 says pound include string?
Yes.
So
Yes.
does each line in your program look exactly like mine?
Oh, I see what I did.
Okay.
I didn't put semicolon.
Yep, semicolons are really important. Okay, did anyone else have a
Thank
question?
you.
Oh, no problem. Okay. And let's say I assigned A to be 3. So if I say int f equals, let's see, A divided by E, and I print out F, what do you think the answer is going to be?
Aren't you going to get an error?
So someone said an error. What did the second person say?
2.
You're going to
1.
Well,
1.2.
Oh yeah.
I think you're going to get a decimal.
the answer
get a
is
decimal.
0.
0.
Because F is an integer, so it can only be a whole number. So if you take 3, you divide it by 5, you would get a decimal normally. But because F is an integer, it can only be a whole number. It says, well, it's less than 1, so I'm just going to have to round down to 0, and it'll put 0 as your answer. Because it can only be a whole number. So if I change it to float, now what do you think the answer is going to be?
You get a decimal.
Point.
1.6.
1.6. Well, it's actually going to
6.6.
it's actually going to be 0.0.
True.
And the reason why that is because A is an integer and E is an integer. So it's going to do that integer calculation, and then it's going to put it in a space in memory that's a float. So it's already done the calculation before it realizes, oh, this is a space for a float. It still works because it's still a number, but actually it only says 0. But if I did fixed show point, it's going to say 0.0 because that's what's actually in that memory space. But if I want it to actually do the decimal calculation, I have to turn either A or E or both of them into a float for it to realize if there's a float in the calculation. Now the computer realizes it's doing calculations for float, and then it'll give me the right number. So if I run the program now, I get the answer 0.6, which is what we actually want. And this would also work.
Fixed and show point.
I'm sorry, somebody said something about fixed and show point.
Yeah, I said, do we really need that? Or do we need that?
Oh, so fixed and show point, just make it so if it wouldn't naturally show the decimal point, it forces the output to show the decimal point. So if I just took this off, should probably just say 0.6. Yeah. The fixed and show point, what they do is it just forces the float to be displayed a specific way, so you can see all the details of what's actually in the computer.
Hey, Professor Blackstone.
Yes.
So only when you put in the float equation like that to have the float of A divided by the float of E, and that will give you the decimal.
Yes, and that'll give you the decimal.
So when you're trying to calculate a float with integers, you have to make sure that you tell the computer you want both integers to be calculated as a float and not regular integers.
Exactly. So what I did right here, where I turned the integer into a float, that's called casting. And you saw how it worked even when I didn't turn E into a float. So if it's dealing with a float in an integer, it'll just assume that you want the calculation to be a float. So it'll convert this E into a float automatically because it saw that the other input is a float. And what that's called is coercion.
Why wouldn't you define it as float when you're defining the variable? So like you see where it says int a equals 3, why don't you do float a equals 3?
Oh, I could do that. I was just doing this as an example to show what you would do if, let's say, for example, you needed A and E to be an integer for some reason. If you needed to change, let's say, for example, you're coding with someone else and they've decided earlier in the code that A is going to be an integer. If you needed to work with A as a float, then you could convert it to a float yourself.
All right, copy.
No problem.
So if
you need the, I'm sorry. So you need the float name?
Yes. So if you want it to be a decimal, then you need either A or E to be turned into a float before you do the calculation.
Okay.
I just had a similar question.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like if you put the float on the E instead of the A, it will still assume that you want it as a float.
Yep. So if I do this, it'll do the same thing, because as long as one of them is a float, the computer will realize that you want a float answer. Okay. Were there any more questions on this?
Is this like a sneak peek into what we're doing in the lab today?
Let me see. Kind of.
Say that again.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
'Cause I'm
So
gonna.
is it? Oh, my bad.
Okay, so look.
Is it better to use float just only if you know you're doing math with a decimal, I guess?
Yeah. So for right now, it doesn't matter which one you use, but once you get more advanced, the reason why you'd use a char instead of a string. So the integer takes up less space in memory than the float. So if you know you don't need. Hey, can that person mute their mic, please? Okay, thanks. Excuse me, could you please mute your mic? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, what were you saying? I think I was in the middle of saying something, but I got distracted.
Me? About the decimals?
Yeah.
Go.
I was saying you just use float like when you know you're going to get a decimal answer for something.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember what I was saying now. So just like if you know you only use a single character, you would use a character instead of a string because it uses less space in memory. If you know you're going to be using an integer instead of a float, you can just use an integer in memory instead of a float because it takes up less space.
Go. Good boy. Go. Good boy.
Whoever is dealing with their dog, could you please mute your mic? Thank you. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a computer program that is going to use a whole bunch of different data types. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a message where I ask the user for different bits of information, and then I'm going to use that information to print a message to them. So the message, so I'm actually just going to walk through it step by step. And then if you have any questions about what I'm doing, then please just let me know. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create space and memory for all the information that I'm going to be getting from the user. So I'm going to create space for my name. Then I'm going to create space for my friend's name. Then I'm going to create space for a first number. I'm going to create space for a second number.
Wait.
Okay, what's your question?
What are we trying to do again?
Oh, so you're not doing anything right now. I'm just walking through the steps of what I'm about to do.
Okay.
So what I'm going to be doing, actually, let me show you exactly what I'm about to do, because that'll make things a lot more clear. So I'm going to print a message that says this. So you and your friend studied programming for the midterm and got what the first number, which is how many you got right, over the second number, which is how many points were on the final. And then I'm going to say they both got whatever grade they got, and they passed or failed the class. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for their name. I'm going to ask the user for their friend's name. I'm going to ask the user for a first number. I'm going to ask them for a second number. Then once I have the first and second number, I'm going to divide them to figure out their letter grade. And then based on the letter grade, I'm going to figure out if they passed or failed the class. Does that make sense to everybody?
Wait, say it again. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for their name. Then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for a name of one of their friends.
Wait, is this for the lab, or is this
This is an example I'm doing in class.
Okay. Should we delete our code and start over to do this?
I would copy the code that you already had for your notes, and then you can delete the code that I've been doing because it's not going to be relevant for the example I'm about to do.
Copy. Thank you.
No problem. So then I'm going to ask the user for a number. Then I'm going to ask the user for a number bigger than the number that they just typed in. And then after I have all that information from the user, then I'm going to do my own calculations to figure out the letter grade and whether or not they passed the class. And so the first thing I need to do in order to accomplish this is I need to create space for all the things I'm going to be asking the user for. So I need the space for the second number. And so I'm also going to need space to do my calculations. And I'm doing this example to show scenarios where you would use different data types. So in order to create space for my name, I'm going to do int string, oh, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. String my name equals quotes. Then I'm going to do string friend name equals quotes. Then I'm going to do int number equals 0. Then I'm going to do int number 2 equals 0.
Didn't you do char for the to create space for the friends' names?
No, I'm going to use string because their name is going to be more than one character.
Oh, okay. So string is, so in a case where you would want to like write someone's name, you would need to use string.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because if their name is any more than one letter, then it has to be a string. Then I'm going to do char letter grade equals A. Then I'm going to do float final grade equals 0. I'm going to do string message equals quotes. So now I have space in memory for all the different things that I need to do this task. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the user for their name.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I understand what all the other variables are for, except for why does the float final grade equal 0? And then what is the string message for?
Okay, so in order to figure out their letter grade, I have to divide the first number by the second number, which is going to be a float because it's going to be a decimal.
Okay.
And then the message is just printing whether they passed or failed the class. So if I
Oh,
figure out the letter grade and it's above failing, then I'm going to print passed. And if it's below failing, I'm going to print failed.
okay. Thank you.
No problem.
So if you're gonna be dividing student number one and number two be a float.
Yep, they could be floats. I was just going to do what I did earlier, though, but I can do that if it's clear. Okay. So I did see out. Please enter your name. Does anyone know what I'm going to do right here? Oh, I already wrote it. Never mind. Sorry. Reflex. Okay. Now, does anybody?
Professor Blackstone?
Yes.
Oh, so for the first part of this code that we're creating right now, we were just listing the steps and then listing what we needed for them, but now we're gonna put it into a C out and C in function.
Yes. So this right here is just basically saying this is all the stuff I need to do what I need to do, and now I'm actually getting into the steps of what I'm trying to do. So the comment right here would be,
So now basically the C out and C, we're basically putting the code together.
Exactly.
Okay. But the first part was just like listing the steps and listing like the basic fundamentals of what we would need to make the code.
Exactly.
I got
Hey,
you.
Professor.
Mm-hmm.
Why is 26 and 27 float? Why ain't it integer?
Oh, I had it as integer before, but it could just as easily be float. So the only difference between integer and float is that float can do decimals and integer can't.
Yeah, but the number isn't going to be a decimal, is it?
It's not going to be a decimal what they type in, but once the computer takes it in, it'll turn it into a decimal. So I won't have to do what I did on line 21.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Did anybody else have questions? Okay. So I did C out, please enter your name, and I did C in my name so I can get the name they entered. Does anybody have an idea of what I'm going to do next?
Ask for the friend name.
Exactly.
String the friend's name.
So I can just copy this. Please enter your friend's name. And then what am I going to do after that?
Reading the friend's name.
Exactly. Okay. And so
You spelled friend wrong.
I did spell friend wrong. Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to ask them for what?
Their grade.
No, I'm not. Oh, yes, I am asking for the grade, but I'm not going to be as specific as that. I'm just going to ask them, please enter a number. So that'll just be number. And in order to get their grade, the second number has to be bigger than the first number.
Hey, Dr. Blackstone?
Yes.
Yeah, when I'm typing in code, like sometimes like it overwrites like the notes. Like how do I fix that?
It overwrites what?
Oh, when I'm actually typing the code, like on the online GDB, like it overwrites the notes. Like how do I fix that? So like it actually pushes forward the text.
Are you highlighting the notes?
No, like when I'm typing like the code next to the notes, it overwrites the notes.
So, oh, I think you just need to press the insert button. Are you working on Windows?
Yeah, I'm in Windows. So just insert.
Yeah, because if you press the insert button by accident, then it'll overwrite what you're typing.
Okay, let me see. Okay, got it. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so now we have everything that we need from the user. So what do you think we're going to do next?
Calculate.
Exactly.
To use the insert in function to calculate it to get the letter grade.
Use what function?
All the queens who are fighting alone.
I was going to say maybe we should use the int function to calculate.
What do you mean by the int function?
The int. We would say probably. Oh, but we can't because it's not a. All right, never mind. Yeah.
That's okay. So to calculate the grade, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the first number by the second number. So I'm going to say final grade equals number divided by number 2. And because I've called number and number 2 floats, and I've also called final grade a float, it's going to be able to do this calculation no problem. So now that we've figured out what they got on the final, do you think we're going to calculate their letter grade?
An if statement?
Exactly. So if what?
If the final grade is above 90 or 89.9, then it would be an A.
Yep. Then we're going to say our letter grade.
But if we use that formula for final grade, won't the final grade be a decimal?
The final grade is supposed to be decimal.
Isn't it supposed to be a percentage?
The percentage is just
greater than or equal to 90.
Oh, that's right.
She's right. It's supposed to be point. Is it supposed to be 0.899?
Yeah. It'd be 0.899, or we could just do times 100
Greater
here.
than or equal to 90.
Oh, yeah, we could do greater than or equal to 90. So we could do greater than equal to 90 if we multiply by 100 on line 40. But if we don't want to do that, we can just put 0.9 right here. Whoops. So then what would this else if be?
Else if final grade is greater than or equal to 0.8, letter grade would equal B.
That's right. Then next one.
C, then D.
Yep. And then for the last one, we're going to do else. Because if it's any lower than a D, then it has to be an F. Okay, so now we figured out their final grade calculation, and we've figured out what letter grade they should get.
Mhm. Isn't there supposed to be a bracket after if?
That is a very good question. So if you have an if statement that is only one line, then you do not need a bracket. But if you want, just for consistency, you can put brackets. That is a very good question. I'm glad you asked that.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. So if you have an if statement that only executes one line after it, then you don't need the brackets. But if you want to have brackets after if statements, it's always good to put them. And so what would my comments be for each of these lines? So for line 40, can somebody say what the comment would be here?
I have a question real quick.
Yes, yes.
What was the last else?
Yes.
If it's under, I'll just let it go F.
Yep. So with this, okay, so I'm actually going to go through the comments for each of these. So for line 40, can somebody tell me what the comment would be?
Calculate the final grade.
Right. And then the comment here would be what?
I'll put A if final grade is equal to or greater than 0.9.
Right. And so those comments are going to all be pretty similar. And so what would the comment here be?
Else do this.
Right. But what is this implying right here?
If grade less than points,
right,
then it is enough.
Wouldn't it be if it's if final grade is less than 0.6 and not equal?
Well, less than, when you just put less than, it implies that it's not equal.
Okay.
Yep. So here we had to put greater than or equal to, because if it's 0.6, then they still get a D. If we just put greater than, if they got 0.6, then they would get an F. That's why the equals is really important right there.
The Professor Blackstone?
Yes.
I think we made a little mistake because greater than or equal to 0.8, it means like 0.9 can still be in there. So it can still be an A.
So the reason for this, so the reason why I put else if on all of these is because in order for the code to get here, then this right here has to be false. So if it's greater than or equal to 0.9, then it'll get an A. And if not, then it'll come down here.
Okay. Oh, that's the reason for the F. All right.
Yep. Because if I just did if for each of these, then you're right. It would actually give the person a D if we didn't put the else's right here, because 0.9 is greater than or equal to 0.6.
Okay.
Wait, do we need an else if for the letter F?
So we don't need an else if for the letter F, because it will only come down here if it's not any of these things. So the way the code runs is it'll first go to line 41 and it'll say final grade, which is whatever we got. Let's say it's 0.61. It'll say, is 0.61 greater than or equal to 0.9? And it'll say no. So then it'll come down to line 45. It'll say, is 0.61 greater than or equal to 0.8? And it'll say no. So then it'll come down to line 49, and it'll say, is 0.61 greater than or equal to 0.7? And it'll say no. So it'll come down to line 53, and it'll say, is 0.61 greater than or equal to 0.6? And it'll say yes. And so then it'll put letter grade to D.
So like if you did put else if for letter F, that would like hurt the code, or
it would not
still
hurt the
like
code.
Okay.
So if you did
So
else here, then let's say they got 0.51. It would do those same steps. It'll say 0.51 is not greater than 0.6. I'd have to put, so if I do else if, then I have to put a whole statement here, less than 0.6, then it would go down here.
Okay, thank you.
So now the problem would be, so there is one problem to this. So what if they calculate a number, let's say they don't type in numbers, let's say they type in a letter and the computer doesn't know what to do. Once it gets down here, the computer just, actually, let's see what happens. If I type in, let's say, well, no, it'll always turn into a number.
Hey, Professor Blackstone?
Yeah.
So if, I forgot what I was just about to ask. Oh, so I'm confused about like the point of the code because like when you get the user's name, you get your friend's name, and then you enter a number. What's the bigger number for?
So the bigger number is what I'm using to calculate the grade they got in the final.
But why do we need our name? Or is it just like just to have it there?
Oh, it's just because I'm going to print this message. So you see what I have on line 64 to 66?
Yeah, so basically, my friend and I basically got the same grade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, got you.
Yeah, it's basically saying you and your friend studied together and you got the same grade.
I have a question. For the letter grade, did we define it? Like, where did we?
So I defined letter grade up here on line 28.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And the reason why I did it up here is because otherwise I'd have to create a new space in memory in each of these if statements. Okay, did anyone else have more questions?
Scroll up a little bit. Up more.
I'm sorry. Did you say a little bit?
Scroll up more.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Is this good?
Up to line 20.
Okay.
Perfect.
No problem.
Wait, my question is, why does the number have to be bigger than the last?
So the number has to be bigger because we want it to be between 0 and 1 for their grade. So you know how you take a test and you get, let's say there's 70 questions in the test and you get 60 right. That's what we're calculating. So the first number is how many you got right, and the second number is how many total points there are in the test.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Professor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I'm not sure who asked to scroll up. Is it okay if we can see the bottom now?
Does the person who needed the top, are you done with that?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, what part did you need?
Just the last statement.
Okay.
Do we put else if for letter grade F, or are we completely done?
I normally just do else because, so I think in this case, it would be fine to do else if, but there's some scenarios where you get values and you wouldn't know what to do with them. And in that case, that's why you would put else at the bottom because, so actually, let me see. I would do else if final grade is less than 0.6. And if there's any scenario outside of that, in this else right here, I would just say, see out, something went wrong. Because this is a scenario that I wasn't planning for. And so I can tell the user that it's not going to, the program's not going to do what they expect it to do.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Professor,
hmm
don't we need to say if we passed or failed?
That's what I'm going to get to next. So
Okay.
are you asking how to do it or just saying that we didn't do it yet?
No, I thought you were done. That's the reason
No,
why.
no, I'm not done. I was just making sure everything. Okay. So, does
Yeah, Professor Blackstone,
yes.
real quick, is this code gonna print out our letter grade?
So it's not going to print out the letter grade because well, actually, yes, it is going to print out the letter grade, but I haven't written that code yet.
Okay.
Okay, so does anybody know what I'm going to do next to figure out whether they passed or failed?
Yeah, we're gonna,
Another if
oh,
else statement.
we're gonna do if final grade greater than or equal to 0.6, then a C out greater than this user pass, and then vice versa.
Could you say that again?
So where you have, all right, so it says if final grade, you would do if final grade is less than symbol, greater than symbol, 0.6, then oh yeah, but that, and then on the line next to it, on the line behind it, you would basically tab C out, then greater than.
Well, I'm not gonna just print out whether they passed right here, because I'm gonna make a whole message. So I created a string message right here, and so I can put either passed or failed inside that string.
Oh, okay.
So I would just say, so yeah, so I'd say message equals passed. Else, well, let me put brackets around it. Message equals failed. Okay, so now I can print out my whole message that I was trying to do down here.
Wait, can you go down one more time? Sorry.
Yes.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you do like multiple conditions inside of an if statement? Like if you wanted to use like the letter grades, could you do like multiple?
Yes. So there's certain symbols for that. So let's say if final grade is greater than 0.6, so the way to do and is to do two and symbols. And let's say, ooh, that actually would be kind of complicated. But let's see if I can figure it out. Okay, so and letter grade is equal to A.
You could do does not equal F.
Yeah, there we go. That's much better. So if you wanted to say both these conditions have to be true, you do and. If you want to say that one of these conditions has to be true, that's how you do or. But we want to do and. Okay, so were there any more questions before I got to the final message?
I'm sorry, but what's the purpose of the exclamation point before the equal sign?
Okay, so if I do equals, that means whatever's in letter grade is equal to this character. And if I do exclamation point, this means not equal to.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Did anyone else have a question?
I have a question. What's the symbol for or again?
So the symbol for or, I'll just put that in the comment. Whoops, it is, I'm not, is it showing that? Oh yeah, that's the right one. So it's going to be the 2 straight vertical lines is for or. Did you get that?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Our lab is today, right?
Yes, the lab is today at 1.
Wait, lab is earlier today?
I thought the lab was at 2.
I'm sorry, 2. I'm on
1 o'clock his time.
I'm on California time. Sorry. Yeah, 2 for you would be 11 for me. I just messed up the calculation in my head. Anybody else have questions? Okay. So
Yeah,
now, yeah.
question. Explain about line 65 again.
Yes. So what this is doing is it's saying if their letter grade is anything besides, let me put the comment under it because you can't really see it. And their final is anything above 0.6. Then they pass the class. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
No problem. Does anyone else have a question?
Wait, so wouldn't this be saying if they get a 6, then they would be failing the class?
That's true. You need greater than or equal to. Okay, thanks for that catch. Anyone else? Okay, so now I'm going to be printing my final message. So what's the first thing I'm going to see out?
String my name.
So when you're using, so you only put the data type when you're first creating space for whatever you're creating space for. And actually, let me give you the name of what these are called. So when you're creating space for a certain data type, it's called creating a variable. So just like you have variables in math, when you create space for something in computer, it's also called a variable because it can basically be any value you give to it. So when you create a variable, then you have to say the data type, but whenever you use it later, like see down here in line 33, when I did C in my name, I didn't have to put string again. So when you're creating space for a variable, it's called a variable declaration because it's basically letting the computer know that when you're creating space for this value, this is what it's going to be called. And this name that you call it is called an identifier.
Okay, thank you.
And let me put that in a comment so I make sure everybody gets that. Okay, good. Any more questions on that?
Could you please scroll back up to
Yes,
see?
of course.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, did everybody take down the notes?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna see out my name, and then I'm gonna put in quotes and, so the computer prints the word and. Then what am I gonna put here?
Friend's name.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm gonna print the next part of the message. Studied programming for the midterm. Ooh. Let me put that on the next line.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you decided to type out "and" this time because you're trying to print the message.
Exactly. And got. So what am I gonna print out here?
First number, second number.
Yep.
Can't you do final grade? Can't you do final grade?
And do
Because
final grade.
final grade is number divided by number 2.
Exactly. So you can do final grade, or you can do first number divided by second number. And I'm going to do times 100. So it'll be a percentage. And I'm going to start another line because that's not going to fit on the screen. And they both got. And what am I going to put here?
Letter grade. Letter grade.
Yep. And what am I going to put here?
Message.
Exactly.
Oh, why are we putting message instead of pass fail?
So the reason why you're putting message is because whether they pass or fail is based on what the user enters.
Okay, cool.
So if they got above, so if they got 60 or above, then you're going to print passed. And if they got anything below 60, you're going to print failed. And the reason we made that a variable is because you don't know that until you calculate what grade they got on the final.
Okay.
Professor, I have a question. When you have the not the letter grade, the final grade, when you have to change that to a string value since you're adding together strings.
So, yes, I believe you're right. Let's test that first, though. Okay, enter my name, Jeremy, Abigail, let's say 82 out of 100. Okay, so Jeremy and Abigail studied programming for the midterm and got 82% in the final. They both got B's and passed the class. So I'm missing some spaces. So the reason why you don't have to convert it into a string is because of these less thans. So it knows that my name is a string because I'm just printing that variable. So if I just have something in white, that's a variable name and it knows what data type that is. And if I put something in quotes, then it knows that it's what's called a string literal. So that basically just means it's a string that's not inside the string variable. And so it'll just print whatever I put in quotes. But whenever I put a variable, then it'll just know what data type it is and it'll automatically convert it into a string. Just like if I'm dealing with one float and an integer, it'll automatically convert something into a float.
Okay, so because of the less than symbols, it's just automatically going to print them all out instead of having to check what the data type of each individual
Exactly.
variable? Okay.
Yeah, so since a string can be anything, whatever is going to take whatever that variable is going to figure out what it would look like on the screen and it's just going to turn it into a string automatically.
Yeah, so why couldn't you put study programming and for the midterm and got together in one quotation mark?
Oh, so that's just because I ran out of space on this line. So I could have done that.
All right.
Just put it down here because you can't see that side of the screen.
Professor, do you mind scrolling back up? Because I think I made a mistake in the beginning.
No problem. So let me know when you want me to stop.
You can stop.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Wait, oh, never mind. I think I got it. But
Okay.
Professor Black, so I kind of like did it another way, but I still got like the everything you got. Like I said, I got the please enter your name, please enter your friends, enter number, enter the bigger number. But what I did was I did where you have the final grade equals number divided by number 2. I just did final grade equals float parentheses number divided by number 2. Then I have all my if statements. Then on the bottom, I just did final if final grade is greater than or equal, then the co-out user passed, else if the user failed. And then I have the statement, but I still got everything like you got.
Yeah, that's a perfectly fine way of doing it. So the only difference is if you did C out, so you said you did C out around where I did line 70.
Yeah, I just have if final grade is greater than or equal to 0.6 and the user passed, if final grade is less than or equal to 0.6, the user failed. And then I have a end line right at where the co-out is so that I can have my statement. But I still got the same thing you got. But my thing is my percentage didn't round up though.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, usually it rounds down. So
because I didn't, never mind. It didn't give me a percentage because I didn't add the percentage thing after the yeah, I see why I didn't, because I see why I didn't get a percent now. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, but everything you did was fine. I just did it this way just to show an example, but there's always multiple ways to do a program.
Can you go back to the top, because I ran the code and it said that and it was exactly the same as yours, but it said a bunch of stuff wasn't declared.
You said what doesn't? What did it say specifically? What wasn't declared?
It said string. It said a bunch of stuff like C out, end L, C in, my name, friend name. I think it's just because I didn't copy that front part.
Yeah. So if you didn't copy this part, then none of the rest of the program is going to work.
That's what I did, but I think that I forgot something like at the top. I think I forgot using.
Oh, so you need, if you want to use strings, you have to have line 10.
Okay, that's what I have too. It's still not working.
And you have pound include IOStream.
Yeah, but I'm putting using namespace STD right now, so I'm missing
Okay,
that.
that's why it doesn't work. Because if you put
Okay.
that, because if you don't put using namespace STD, it's going to have these files here, but it's not going to read them.
Okay.
In order to read them, you need using namespace STD. And then you can use all the stuff that's in IOStream and string.
Okay. I have the same problem, but still not as much. It says C out was not declared, end L was not declared, and CN was not declared.
So do you have pound include IOStream?
Yes, I do. Oh, wait. No, I don't. It says, okay. Sorry, I didn't notice that.
No problem. Yeah, because if you don't have these, then it's not going to understand what C out or C in or the less than or string are.
Okay. Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Perfect. Did anybody else have any questions about the program we wrote? Okay. So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is what are called functions. So
I'm still writing. I'm coming. Please go down. I'm still writing.
Okay, go down.
is this good?
Mine's saying that there was an error where I put else without a if, without a previous if.
Okay,
It was
so
right after the letter grade F equals F. Wait, it said I copied it. Oh wait, I didn't put. Okay, stay right there for 1 second. I didn't put letter grade. Final grade is less than 60.
Professor,
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
No problem.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but does it matter if there's no space between the wordings? Because the two names I use, they're smushed together.
Oh yeah, so that all you have to do is just add spaces in the quotes and that'll create those spaces on the screen. Because you see, even I forgot to do some of them. So like between programming and for, I forgot a space. And between the period and day, I forgot a space. That's not a big deal.
Thank you.
No problem.
Professor, for the code, because of how we set it up and how we calculated the final grade, I think we have to add the two numbers and then divide by 2 to get the average.
Oh,
Because
we're
someone
not.
could get,
We're not figuring out the average grade. We're just assuming that they both got the exact same grade.
yeah, so for example, someone could get a 30 and the same person can get a 40 and they can still pass the class. Because of how we had it set up. Because 30 divided by 40 is higher than 60.
But
Yeah,
30,
that percentage.
yeah,
would
because
be
that person
passing
got
grade.
past the class.
Okay,
So
okay.
we're just calculating the percent that they got on the final. So if there's only 40 questions and they got 30 right, then that's a C.
Oh, okay. That's what you're saying. Yeah.
I have a problem on mine. It says the CN was expecting a semicolon before it.
Oh, that's probably because you were missing a semicolon on the line before.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Could you scroll down a little bit?
Hmm?
A little bit more.
Yeah, just tell me
All
when
right,
to
so
stop.
you see right here 66. If final grade is greater than or equal to 0.6, what's that exclamation point for? Exclamation point equals F.
So exclamation point equals means not equal to.
Okay.
So basically, if letter grade is anything besides F and they got higher final grade than 60%, then they pass.
Okay.
But this part is actually unnecessary, but we just added that just to show we could.
El Chapo, bro. Yeah,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
El Chapo, bro. Shit, all right.
I'm sorry, somebody was saying something?
Mine keeps saying 0%. Like I got the whole message, but every time I put in the grade, it says got a 0%.
Oh, that's probably because you're dealing with an integer instead of a float.
Okay, so I need to go up and put float number. Okay.
Yep, because if you're dealing with an integer, it only does whole numbers. So if the first, and we put into the program that the first number has to be smaller than the second number, and so the answer is always going to be 0, because it doesn't do fractions or percentages or anything.
Okay. Yeah, it worked now.
Good.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else?
Could you
Okay.
scroll to the statements?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Scroll to the first of the statement for the letter grade. Right there. A little lower. Thank you.
No problem. So the last thing I'm probably going to have to go over a little bit in lab as well, but let me just give you an introduction to it. Is the person who needed this, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I know I briefly mentioned this, but you know how every program has int main? That's because main is what's called a function, and the main function does everything your program needs to do. So it basically executes all the steps that are within these brackets. But there's other functions you can have within main that main can call, and they can also do other tasks. And so you see how main is an int? You can have functions that use different data types. So you can have a char function. So I could say char get character. Or I could have float get number. And so main will call these what are called functions, and these functions will do stuff. And then when they're done, they're going to send some value back to main. So you see at the end of main, remember how we always have to put return 0? Well, that's because main returns an integer, and we almost always put 0 because when we return 0 to the computer, it knows that everything in the program went fine. And that's just what the computer understands. But if we had a function called getCharacter, we might say return A, or return B, or return F, or return asterisk. And let's say we want to have a function that doesn't return any value. Then we say that function is called a void function. So I'm going to create a void function called print message. And so all it's going to do is I'm just going to take this code and I'm going to put it down here.
Wait, what is this?
So this is what's called a function. So a function is basically something that main calls that just does something. So instead of putting all that code in main, I can have a function called print message that does the same thing. So if I do this, my code should run. Okay. Oh, shoot. I have to send it all those here. This is a bit more complicated than I want it to do. So I'm just going to have print. So I'm going to keep this here. I'm just going to have print message do cout. Everything worked.
So what would this do now?
So After the program did everything, so JA 55 100. So the program's going to do everything it normally did, and then it's going to get down to this line which says print message, and it's going to go down and it says, okay, what does print message do? And then it's going to run the steps within print message.
Which is just to tell us that everything worked.
Exactly.
But isn't that what the return function is, essentially?
So the return function, so the return 0 for main tells the computer that everything worked. And this print message function tells the user that everything works. So it prints out everything worked to the screen.
Okay.
What is the purpose of having the print message as a separate function?
So this particular function, it's not purposeful to make it a separate function, but let's say, for example, you had some code that you wrote that you were going to use multiple times in your program. You could put that code into a function, and so you wouldn't have to type all those lines in main again. All you'd have to do is write it one time in the function, and then you could call the function whenever you wanted to use it later in the program.
Oh, okay, thanks.
No problem. So we're a little bit over time. I just wanted to make sure I at least introduced that. I'm going to probably go more over functions in lab because that was not enough of an introduction. But does what I said so far make sense?
Will we need the print function for, will we need the message, the everything worked for lab?
Yeah, so we're going to be using simple functions in lab. That's why I wanted to at least introduce it. But I'm going to go over it. I'm going to go over it. Sorry, you go.
Oh, you can finish. Sorry, my fault.
Okay, but I'm going to go over functions more in lab to make sure you can do what I'm asking you to do.
But on our lab today, when we're turning it in, we're going to have to have the print message on it to get credit, to at least like, okay, all right.
In order to have the print message work, did you put something at the top? Like, did you do the?
I did.
Okay, that's
so this right here. So just like you declare a variable int a to let the computer know whenever I do a is talking to a space in memory, I did the same thing for the function print message. So I said void print message to let the computer know, hey, later on in the program there's going to be a function called print message and it's not going to return anything. So I gave it the data type void.
And the float get number doesn't do anything in this particular program because you didn't use it.
Exactly. So I didn't create the get number function. I didn't create the get character function.
We need to have the float get number and the char get number before it too as well.
I'm going to go, so I didn't really explain these at all. So I'm going to explain these in lab, and you're going to have to use one that's similar to this. So this is called a void function, and this is called a value returning function because it returned some value.
Are we turning in the code that we wrote today?
So no, you're not turning in the code that you wrote today. This is all just for your notes.
I have a question about the functions. Can you do like nested functions similar to like how you do nested loops?
Yes. So you can do nested functions just like you do nested loops. So you can have main call print message, and then print message can call get character, and then get character can call get number.
Okay, and would they need to be inside the function as well?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So you see how I have print message right here in main?
Mm-hmm.
So that's telling main, hey, I need you to call the function print message. So if I had, let's say, get character down in print message, then it would go start. So once main called print message would call get character.
Okay.
And it always, so, and if you have a function, it always goes back to the function that calls it. So let's say I had more code within print message, it would do see out everything worked, then it would call get character, then it would do whatever get character told it to do, then it would go back to print message and do whatever else print message told it to do. Then once print message is done, then it would go back to main and do whatever else main told it to do.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, did anybody have any last minute questions?
Also, is the the original main function, is that like a required thing for C++?
Yeah, so the original main function is a required thing for C++. So if you want a program that does anything, you have to have int main.
Okay.
Professor, you said that for the lab that we're gonna have soon that we have to input print message.
Yeah, so you are going to have to write functions in the lab, but during lab time, I'm going to go over it in more detail.
Okay, thank you. And that's like 2 o'clock? Just so
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
no problem. Okay. Well, I'll see all of you in
Yeah,
lab.
Professor, you might have to go over functions again during
Yeah,
lab because I
I'm
don't
definitely
know.
going to go over it during lab. I did not give it nearly enough time.
We're using the same link from last time for
Yeah.
lab.
Yep. So we're using the same link that we used last week for lab.
All right, thank you.
Does everybody have that link?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, see you all at 2 or whatever time that is for wherever you are in the world.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Joshua, you're welcome. So Joshua, make sure to send me an email so I can give you the link.
Wait, is the link to lab different than the link to this?
Yeah, so lecture has a link and then lab has a different link.
Okay.
So if you don't have that link, make sure to email me asking for the link.